Welcome to another episode of the BrightWord Books Podcast, where we bring you engaging conversations with authors and dive into their latest works. I'm your host, Chris Dabbs, and today we're excited to have debut author Mark Levy with us to discuss his novel, What a Mess, Blackmail. Mark brings a wealth of life experience to his writing, from his time in the Marine Corps to his varied career in insurance and martial arts. Now he's channeling all of that into his debut novel, which explores the unexpected twists of an affair gone wrong. Mark, welcome to the show. And obviously, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you. So how are things over there then in the west, on the western seaboard of the States today? How's the weather?
Actually, today it's pretty nice. Yesterday, I'm in the Seattle area, so we get dumped on quite a bit. But today's a little bit drier and a little bit brighter.
Oh, that's always a good thing, right?
Well, it's because you and your audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we act as a ray of sunshine across the world. That's what it is, right? It must be that. Why didn't I think of that before? Yeah, it's got to be, isn't it? Well, listen, Mark, you've got such an interesting background. I mean, you've been in the Marine Corps, which I can see behind you as well. That photo that's up on the wall. Fantastic. And now you're also a second-degree black belt. I mean, wow. How did your sort of, diverse career path influence your decision to become a novelist? Because it's not the traditional route, is it?
No, it's not. And actually, way back in elementary school, like last millennium elementary school, right there, I was always writing short stories, like first grade, second grade, third grade. I had a very active imagination, and I just liked to write. So I always wrote, 3 to 5 page stories. And as I got older, life happens and I didn't write as much. And then life happens again and I started writing again. And just everything about the stories that I currently have published has obviously, since I wrote it, every character has a little bit of me, but it's also about my experiences and how I could kind of whittle them down to what I wanted from the story too. So it's just, it's kind of like going to the grocery store. Okay, I'll go to aisle 10, life experiences, then aisle 11, other people's experiences, take a little bit there and make a gumbo out of it.
Making a gumbo. I love that phrase. Exactly. So you're mixing your experiences, other people's experiences, and your imagination together, right? Oh, yeah. And so I guess that's what it makes. That's what makes the book What a Mess, Blackmail, which is your debut novel, a unique blend of suspense and character-driven storytelling, right? Because you've melded and meshed all these experiences together. So what inspired the initial idea for the novel? I mean, how did you go about, developing the story? Because authors all do it differently, don't they?
They do on there. And this is slightly embarrassing on it, but I do like reading erotica novels on there, especially online stories on there. And sure. I do belong to an online group that has quite a bit of stories there, but I kept reading the stories. And while some of them are good, the vast majority of them, I just kept like I'm reading a brick wall, and it wasn't sinking in. I just stopped thinking, I could write a story better than that. And then I realized I have my degree in creative writing. I haven't used it at all. So it's like I started it with this one here. And I remember it was May 19th of 19, listen to me, 19 that I started writing it. And just I took the things I liked, and then I just kind of swapped it. I took the tropes and just put them backwards, just to put an additional zing to it, so that if you think what's going to happen, it's not going to happen.
So there are lots of twists then, things like that, right?
Yes.
You see, that's the thing, right? Because the book starts with a scandal, or basically, spoiler alert, an affair being exposed, right? So what made you want to explore the dynamics of infidelity? Is that something you really wanted to look at? And how did you want to portray its impact on the characters in the book? Because obviously it can affect people in different ways, but usually not in a good way.
Correct. And so I chose infidelity because it's an erotica story. So it has to have some type of basis within the erotica realm for that right there. And this is something because of books and movies and TVs that people are kind of inundated with, and it's another affair, they're shocker type thing. We've become so desensitized to certain things that they no longer shock us. And that's one of the things I wanted to do is say, so it starts out as an affair that gets caught. But then what's the real hook to it? And so the hook is that the mistress her son finds out about the affair and then confronts the main character, Jim. So to kind of put this into context, they're next door neighbors. Again, shocker,
Yeah.
But the husband, Jim, and the mistress's husband, Paul, both work in the military in the same office in the psychological operations department. Both wives are FBI profilers and work at the local FBI office. So, again, a lot of the stories and a lot of the TV movies that you see is like one, the affair person is this guilty person and the wife is dumb and doesn't get it until it slaps him in the face in regard.
Right.
And I didn't want to disrespect the wife in regards to there too. I want strong characters that everyone could actually esteem as believable. So then the son comes over and confronts the Jim, the character, with the blackmail. So Jim is a 35-year-old captain in the Army, well known in his circles for his interrogation skills. Matt, the son, is 18 years old, half his age, and has all the power over Jim now. And Matt has been in love with Jim since they moved in 5 years ago, but he knew he couldn't do anything until he was an adult because he figured that Jim could just brush him off because he's a minor. And then Matt finds out that his mother's having an affair with a man he loves. And it's like, okay, this is a win. And the other thing that is very prominent within the book is that some men get caught up in the size of their endowment in regards to there. And Jim is one of those. And Matt is one of those too. And Matt is having issues growing up because his is extremely large. He doesn't know how to use it. It's caused him more pain than pleasure. And then you realize his mother is having an affair with the man he loves, who can relate to what Matt is going through. So now he gets to force a relationship with Jim and force a relationship with Jim to be his mentor because they have that in common too. And then that, in Jim's mind, he's used to being the big man on campus. And in the beginning, he thinks he is the big man in campus until he realizes, I have an entire scene where Jim realizes that he's no longer the big man in campus and Matt is the big man on campus. And that sends him into a spiral too. And so the entire story, it's just what you think is going to happen doesn't happen because we're kind of programmed into the tropes that we like. And we realize that this trope isn't working out the way I thought it's working out.
Right. So you've got Captain Jim Clinton, I think, isn't it? He's quite an intriguing character. Like you say, I mean, he's got a powerful job, right? He basically wields lots of power over people because of his job with the interrogation, as you mentioned. And so he's really not used to, I guess, being on the back foot. Correct. And being manipulated, right? And told what to do and everything else. All right. So can you tell us a bit more about his motivations then? And what makes him different from typical sort of protagonists, I guess, in this genre? I mean, apart from the fact that he's highly skilled, highly educated, and, at the end of the day, used to being in charge.
Correct. So Jim, it's funny because when I started writing this story, Jim was just going to be this guy in the military having an affair. But as I kept writing more and more, he started to flesh out more, just like all my characters, and everyone's character should flesh out on there. So it turns out that Jim's mother was raped when she was 15 years old, and she decided to keep the baby. So they don't know who his father is. So he grew up without a father figure. He had his grandfather and grandmother as figures, but they weren't father, if that makes sense in regards to there. And we find out about this in a scene with both Charlotte, Matt, and Jim, because one of the things that Matt says, well, if I have control over some, I want to have a three-way. So he forces a three-way and gets Jim to set it up in regards to there, which is another long plot line that happens right there. Wow. Matt's just going to push it for as much as he can on it. But, that's one aspect of Jim is that he doesn't have a father figure. When he was 5 years old, he was watching television and he saw the U.S. Army invade Panama to go after Manuel Noriega. And then he saw how the psychological operations went. Hold on a second. My turn to cough. If you can't tell, I am fighting a cold right now, so I apologize on that.
No worries.
He saw the psychological operations division of the U.S. Army go after Manuel Noriega. And from that moment on, his one driving core was the U.S. Army psychological operations. That's where he wanted to be for the rest of his life. So he knew where he wanted to go. He made his life going up to college and joining the Army specifically for that. And he's a good man, but just like everyone else, he makes bad decisions. And this is one of the affair was a bad decision on there. But
I think this is the point, isn't it? Yeah, we all make bad decisions.
Right. And that's kind of what I want people to take away from the story is that actions have consequences. But here's the thing, though, is that the way the story is set up, we think that Jim went after Lisa, his mistress. It was the other way around. Lisa went after Jim, and he kept telling her no. He kept telling her no. He kept telling her no until she hit on his ego about his penis size. And then it's like, I'll be right over.
Us men, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah. Exactly. Easily manipulated. That's the point, isn't it? Oh my gosh. So, okay. So in the book, obviously, Jim's affair, it's discovered by his mistress's son, as you've mentioned, and that's Sam, isn't it? Or Matt. That's it. So from what I see, this sets the stage for a complicated relationship, as you've mentioned, how far it goes later on, right? So why did you introduce that conflict through the son rather than another character? Because that is such a different facet, such a different angle, isn't it? It's not like the neighbor across the street who sees him going in and out of the house or something and then starts blackmailing, which I guess is your trope, right? Or someone like that. The son is, that's quite intriguing. How did you come across that?
Because it throws the power dynamic off in regards there. Because in all of the movies with the evil villain, it's the scientist, it's the CEO, it's the billionaire, the zillionaire, it's the person in charge. Here, it's someone who has nothing except power over the person, the alpha, for lack of a better word, in regards to there. And I didn't want to make, the neighbor's the same age as the main character. That's no fun. Because I remember growing up, as shocking as this may be, I was bullied growing up. I just wished I had power over my bullies. And I thought, well, here's a kid who's been in love with a character, had no way of making it happen, suddenly has the power to make it happen. And it went from there on there. So again, throwing the tropes off, taking that power dynamic and turning it 100% on its head in regards there, where the person who generally you would write off as insignificant is suddenly the most significant person to this person who can change the world, who's gone on military missions, fought in combat scenarios, rescued hostages, is now at the mercy of an 18-year-old.
Exactly. And, I'm thinking about that now. If that were to happen to me, how would I feel with an 18-year-old being, basically having the power over the outcome, of any situation? And you just don't know. And I mean, it would be bad enough with an adult, don't get me, or, an older adult. But I think that blackmail like that, I mean, it's quite interesting. Blackmail, obviously, is now central to the story because of what Matt's going to be doing. What drew you to the blackmail thing? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, surely he could have just had the affair, right? Or tried to have the affair and then had the affair. Why the blackmail as well? Is that just an add for Matt's point of view? Is that just because that's his kind of personality, like mean, or what?
Well, how would you accomplish your goals without it? Because again, from Matt's point of view, he's an 18-year-old in love with Jim. And he knew that Jim would never pay any attention to him. So he had to force a reckoning on it. It's not like he could go up to him and say, Jim, I know you're having sex with my mom, but I want to have sex with you too. It's like, no, go away. It's like, I have proof you're having sex with my mom. And if you don't do what I say, I'm going to tell your commanding officer and my dad, and your life is going to be in a world of trouble. And that's how it happens on it right there. And with, Matt is an extremely smart kid. And this isn't a spoiler per se, because it's in the first book on there. But Matt is blessed with a photographic memory. So he remembers everything. And he's able to delve into it and just it's like his brain is a personal computer that has no errors whatsoever. It just, when it deals with emotions, that's when the kinks or the quirks start to come up with his memory on it right there. But here's a kid who for 5 years has been in love with the guy next door and knew he could have no chance. And suddenly here's the chance he needed. Because it's a win-win for him. He gets to force a relationship with him, but he also gets him as a mentor to help him with his own personal issues, with his own endowment on it. He sees no problem with it whatsoever.
No, right. So does he have a father figure himself?
He does. That would be Paul, who is Jim's best friend. They're like brothers from a different mother.
Yes.
Yeah, but Jim, even though they're really close together and they respect each other and they have a great friendship, Jim looks down on Paul, but generally a lot of men in general, because they're not as big as he is. Again, it's that ego thing that, I'm the big man on campus. And even though Paul is accomplished in his own right, he can't compete with Jim in that regards. And that's one of the things that between Jim and Matt is they both have large endowments. And in the beginning, Jim thinks, well, at least I've still got this over Matt. Later on, it's realized Matt royally outdoes him.
Right. So that really does, again.
Huge kick in the ego for Jim. It's like, I can't win.
Yeah. No, not at all. I mean, that's the point, though. So you've got all these characters that are involved, and they're all educated. And it seems to me that they're kind of, if they're all having affairs, well, they're not all, are they? Well, actually, they are. But if they're all having affairs, the morals here, I mean, where is it that, they don't care about this, do they? I mean, let's face it. They're just like hedonists, aren't they? They're just really out for themselves. Is that right?
I wouldn't say I'd say opportunists.
Opportunists, right.
Because, moral ambiguity, because when it comes to their professional lives, they're right there. Nothing, no slack, no cut whatsoever, whether it's on the FBI side, whether it's on the PSYOP side, it is what it is. And all of them, Jim and his wife, Charlotte, Lisa and her husband, Paul, all of them use information daily in their career. They use it like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Matt is extremely intelligent too, but he uses it like a sledgehammer. So he doesn't know the finesses of it yet. And that's one of the fun things is writing, as he emotionally matures, how he starts to manipulate the situation even more to get Jim under his control on there.
As he matures, it gets worse. Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, one of the things that Jim talks to himself about is how do I make sure that Matt doesn't end up where I was? So, because as much as Jim in the beginning doesn't like what's happening to him, he still likes Matt. He can still sort of empathize with Matt because he's been in the same boat on there. But Jim had a not friendlier situation, but an easier situation growing up, whereas Matt did not. And I don't mean friendlier like friends types. It's just knowledge-wise on what to do with certain like things with endowment, things like that, things that normally you don't talk about on there.
Yeah.
And so, but Matt is a very likable character. But when he wants something, he's going to get it, which is what the PSYOPs, they have their objective: get the enemy. Matt's objective: get the man he loves.
Yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because again, it's about the focus, it's about the manipulation, and about, like you say, getting to the end goal. But also, it seems to me it's about secrets as well, isn't it? The consequences of secrets even. Because if a secret's broken or everybody knows, well, obviously then it's not a secret. But what are those consequences? So in other words, Jim and Matt, if that breaks out, obviously this is the whole point of the story, right? And so what do you hope that your readers take away from the way that the secrets unfold and affect the characters in the story? Is there a message that you're trying to get across with the story?
The huge message is actions have consequences. And you don't know where those consequences will lead you. Because as we go more into because the book is 676 pages long.
Wow. Okay. Didn't realize.
It's like a Robert Jordan Wheel of Time book, just almost as big as that right there. But it's not. So you can't have a story that long without the thriller part of it, because this is an erotical thriller, because it's in the mind, in the relationships that's going on there. So after Jim, Charlotte, and Matt have the three-way, Jim and Charlotte are talking on the couch because Matt's asleep, and the next day Matt's still sleeping in. And Charlotte confesses that she's made some bad decisions that affected their marriage too. And so now Jim has to figure out, well, what did she do? I thought it was me, but she's not telling. And so we just get to learn more and more. Nothing, let me just say this again, nothing is surface level with this book. There are layers upon layers upon layers upon layers that you can just dig down even deeper on. And it opens up so many more plot possibilities too.
Yeah, sure. So Jim's not having a good time, I think, is what we could safely say.
Well, actually, in the beginning, Jim is horribly afraid of Matt. But as this continues, Jim starts to get turned on by that reversed power dynamic. He starts to embrace it more and more. And I'm not sure, this would be kind of a spoiler on it, but this is something he actually talks to his wife about because she's a profiler. This is right up her alley. So in the beginning, they're talking, they have sex too. So after they're done talking sex, the conversation comes around. Well, what about this? Talk about this situation. And Charlotte, his wife, just tells him right off the bat, ever since I met you, I thought that you were repressed. And now suddenly these feelings are coming up and you don't know how to handle it because you've repressed them so much. So again, with movies, television, books, the wife is always, oh, you've ruined the marriage. I can't trust you anymore. It's like, no, that you need to explore this. The wife is on board. Now, that's primarily driven also because of her guilt on how she thinks she destroyed the marriage.
So this is it, isn't it? Okay, so he's been on a real emotional journey, and he goes through this in the 684 pages of the book. What are you hoping that people are going to take away from that? The readers, is Jim a likable hero, or is he somebody that they end up disliking?
Well, I'm hoping they like him. Because I do have a test audience. The test audience they like Matt, but they do see him more as the villain type thing. But again, since I wrote this on an erotic forum, a lot of people empathize with Matt too on there. So I've got my Matt supporters, I've got my Jim supporters, I've got supporters for everybody in the book. What I want everyone to realize is that nothing is one-sided at all. There's this side, 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 there's this side. It's multi-sided. And if you just look at everything instead of linearly, but look at the entire picture, then you're able to make a better decision. And that's what the sequel is about too, because the sequel, it comes to a head at the end of the book. On there, and I leave the book on a cliffhanger. I wrote it kind of like a comic book. Each chapter is its own little story, and then it moves into the next one, and then there's the overall arc. And so I leave the book on a major cliffhanger, and the second book picks up immediately right after there, and it just explodes into drama like you wouldn't believe. Everybody is affected.
I like that. So that's okay. So all I can think of now, I'm getting quite sort of excited by the premise of this, right? So you've got a situation where people are under pressure. They've got things that are unexpected, because they're used to being in control. They're used to being the big man on campus. They're used to all of that sort of stuff. I mean, how did you go about getting into the head of this character and putting them straight down a path that makes some sense? I mean, what did your training in the Marine Corps help with that, or sales training, psychology? How did you do it?
Actually, I think a little bit of each of that on there, because one of the things that Jim always falls back on is his PsyOps training, his military background, because that's been ever since he was 5. That was his rock. That was his defining statement. Then Charlotte, his wife, that was his other rock. That was his other anchor on there. But Jim also recognizes that he went down a bad path, not actually with the affair. It started back in college, and he finds that out when he talks with Charlotte. in regards to there, because they had three ways in college too. But Jim always but Jim gave off this vibe that because he was bigger than everyone else, I'm this cocky guy, and he was a little bit cold and standoffish. But he got off on that. So he geared his personality toward that. But the more that Matt made him submissive, the more power he had to give up, the more relaxed he became. And the more fun he became around his friends and family and coworkers. His major sat him down one day. This is weeks after the affair started, and goes, "Is everything okay at home?" And it's like, Jim's like, "How did he find out that I'm, and he said, "What do you mean?" It's like, "You're more relaxed. You're more personable. You're more efficient." And Jim's like, "Just things are going well, sir." And in back of the mind, it's going, how is my being more submissive to Matt making me a better officer? How is it making me a better human, basically? Because the blackmail saves his marriage to Charlotte. They were married, but they then became roommates and they were drifting apart. But the blackmail brought them together. They started talking to each other. The blackmail saved their marriage. And because of that, Jim holds no anger towards Matt because of that. Because, Matt set it up like a psychological operation. He did it by the book. He came in, he knew what the objective was. He got the objective. That was something that Jim could appreciate in regards to there. Because there's lots of times throughout the story, Jim goes, Jesus, this kid would be a great intelligence officer. Not realizing, and he does realize this later on, that Matt has been studying every required reading material for psychological operations. And because of his memory, he remembers it all.
Well, no, exactly. Which, I wish I could do that. Eidetic memories, yes, please. Yeah, all right.
Make my life. Okay. I can tell you that too.
Yeah. So, okay. So, looking at the plot, looking at the story, looking at all the experiences in it. I mean, I've got to ask you: are there any events in your life that you've seen, or from people from your past, that have influenced these characters? I mean, let's face it, did it just pop into your head, or do you know someone like that?
Right. So yes and no in regard. So no, I myself have never been or never did blackmail anyone for sex. That's 100% fictional. Clear this for the entire podcast community. I do not blackmail people for sex. That's what Grindr and Scruff is for. Come on, people, give me a break here. But as I was writing this story, on the erotic forum, I got contacted by people where this has happened to them. And they told me theirs, and I'm not going to get into the details because that's not my place to share that in regards to there. One of the weird things I will share is I have talked to this one guy who was reading my story, and we just talking back and forth, and he identifies as straight, but he's always been curious about just having oral with men, him giving the oral on it. And he trained himself specifically because he found a gentleman that who's very well endowed on there, even better than my main character. And so he just practiced on him, practice, and he got to be where Jim is with Matt on there. And now those two are in a quasi relationship with each other, but his quasi partner likes to find other well-hung men and bring them over for this guy to satisfy. And so I have an entire chapter in the book because there's another character that comes in named Josh, who is openly gay in the military. Because this is well past don't ask, don't tell being repealed. So this is fine for the time frame that it's set in. And Josh was in contention to become the regimental XO for the entire intelligence division, which he got. And so Josh has been a sounding board for Jim because what do I do on here? And so Josh says, well, I know a bunch of guys that could, how did I say this? But that are very well endowed and give your friend a run for his money. And, Jim's going, right, a whole bunch of guys that sit around waiting for someone to come over to blow them. And Josh doesn't say anything. And then Jim realized it's true. He does. And so Josh sets this up with 5 other guys, and Charlotte comes along to watch. Jim's wife comes along to watch. And so they all go over there and they have this experiment going on, because Jim's trying to justify, why am I behaving this way towards Matt? And so Josh says, well, I have a bunch of well-hung men. Let's see how you react to them. And so they go in there, and the bet is Jim has to figure out which one of them is the best hung of them. And if he's correct, they have a side bet going on. They have to pay him $500. And so Jim, and the ages range anywhere from 24 to 55 on there. And the reason this comes about is because Jim thinks he suffers from from big dick superiority. And that's exactly what it sounds like for those who don't know in regards to there. And so the idea is to see if Jim will feel just as submissive with these guys as he does with Matt. And so there's like 3 chapters of this going on there. Not just the sex side of it on here, but the setup, the drive over, introducing each other and introducing all of the characters. And it turns out that the 24-year-old is the one that is the best hung on there. And Jim starts in, and he's kind of like disappointed because this kid isn't anything like Matt, because he turns out to be a grower instead of a shower, whereas Matt is literally in your face. He's just bam right there. But once the kid starts growing, then Jim starts getting into it, but not the mental part of it wasn't there, and it's the mental part that's driving him up the wall with Matt. So then that kind of washes out the big dick superiority thing. So the rest of the book is trying to figure out, why am I behaving this way towards him? It's not just the blackmail. Something else is driving him to be this way.
So people who are used to being in charge, I guess, like this switch over to being more submissive sometimes, don't they? So because from what I've heard, it's about relinquishing control, right, and actually, not having to think about these things all the time. Right. So that's quite interesting. But also
clarify, it's not every guy. There's just certain guys behave it because they need to give up control to regain control. Because if they're 100% in control, then it's just eventually they're going to snap. And for these specific group of individuals that are the alpha by day, but the sub by night, this is what helps them just relax. They can go back to being that alpha by day.
Yeah. There's not so much pressure on them then, I guess.
Right. You have to do what they're told.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what a lot of authors, we'll move on a bit now to how you write, because people listen to the podcast to try and, get some experiences from more experienced authors like yourself, really. Even though this is your debut novel, you've been doing it for a while, right? You've been writing for a while, and you've I was going to say finessed the novel and everything else over quite some time. So what challenges have you come across, basically, transitioning to writing fiction from your normal job, I guess, or your jobs, I should say, because you do several, don't you?
Right. So I haven't transitioned to be a full-time author on there because people at the sales haven't been there to justify it on it right there. So I still need the other job. The thing that I've been finding more than anything else is you do need to set time aside to just sit down and write. And sometimes you're going to sit there and say, I don't want to write. I don't want to. Please don't make me write. Yeah. And then I just have to set the computer down because it's too big at that point in time. Then at other times, it's just like, I can write 10 chapters with no problem whatsoever. You can't force the story, at least from my perspective. You cannot force the story, because I had all these scenes that I wanted to write towards that never happened because the story wouldn't let me. And yet I have all these scenes that happened that I never thought about because the story drove me that way. So if you're sitting there and, you have an end goal, but the story's taking you in a different place than the end goal, move the end goal. Go where the story is going. In my head, I had this big fight scene between Jim and Paul, Matt's father, because of the affair going on right there, where they literally embarrassed their commanding officer in a meeting where they're supposed to be giving an in-depth report on an operation to go on in Venezuela. And they just bombed the meeting and embarrassed the major in front of his superiors because of their infighting. And I couldn't get the story there. Art pieces, so much on it right there. But what ended up happening, and this is primarily in the sequel, is it made the story in the sequel that much stronger for there. The story will tell you where to go. Even if you only write 3 sentences for the day, write those sentences. You may have to go back and rewrite those sentences. Write the sentences. They're in your head for a purpose. They're in your head for a reason.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people, authors that I interview, will say a similar thing where, either, the story's gifted to them. It just sort of flows. It comes out. And like you say, you could write 10 chapters in one day, and then another day it would be, a difficult, thing to get on with, basically. Okay. So as an author, what's coming up next then? You say there's a sequel.
Correct.
So
this one is What a Mess, Blackmail. The sequel is What a Mess, Betrayal. And this is where you learn not how the affair got started, but why the affair got started.
Right. So, okay. So was this, what there's the, there's this trend now, isn't there, in movies and TV shows to have a prequel. So this is, as you're saying, it's a prequel then, right?
Well, I get isn't any first story a prequel?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. If you're going to look at it like that. but yeah, and because eventually, my initial story was going to be 6 books, 2 trilogies, but because of everything I'm adding in now, because now, in the second book, because I allude to it in the first book. In the first book, Jim has to have a Zoom call with the Israeli embassy on there for their intelligence officer there. But instead of talking to the intelligence officer, he gets the number 2 person at the embassy there talking to him, which is unheard of. And it turns out, because of a mission he had in Syria to rescue some hostages, one of the hostages that was rescued was her cousin. Right. And so she feels a little indebted to him because of that. But also the Israeli Defense Force feels indebted to him too, because he saved a lot of people's lives that were hostage that day. And it's that where we start to learn that there's human trafficking going on on the Venezuelan-Guyana border. And that's where eventually I want to take the books later on, is to that area to confront the ring. But in the second book, that trafficking ring, the Romero crime syndicate, becomes a much bigger threat on base because they've infiltrated the base.
Wow. So is it still heading towards being erotica? Oh, yeah. Now we're talking about
you're definitely
bringing in.
And my test market, they love the story, but they hate it because they want more sex. And the story isn't driving me to the sex. There's only been 2 sex scenes that I've had on there so far. And the first one felt forced to me because we want the sex. So fine, do it. It didn't. But the second one felt better because it was more within the context of the story on it there. But yeah, because I don't want to get too much into those, because again, the reasons why the affair happened is going to reshape the story also. Right.
So you're not looking to emulate Tom Clancy or anyone else like that?
No. Sort of yes or no, because I do have some good fight scenes in the story too, and that's 100% from the martial arts side of it, right there, right there. So I've had my sensei, who's a 3rd degree sensei, said it was really good and offered me a little bit of constructive criticism. Then I've got 2 6th degree black belts that have read it and are giving me feedback on that too, on it. So yeah, and there's going to be some good fight scenes in there, and there is definitely some good drama, because we've got traitors in the psychological operations division, and we need to get them out.
Pesky traitors.
I know. For providing a good drama. Darn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, Mark, brilliant. Thank you very much. We're running out of time now, unfortunately.
No, I want 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. We're going to have to do part 2 of this at some stage. All right. So listen, thank you, Mark, for sharing your story and obviously all those insights behind What a Mess, Blackmail. I mean, it sounds amazing, I've got to say. it's been a pleasure hearing about your journey as well, actually. And, everything and the inspiration behind the novel. And basically, for our listeners, this is a message for you guys. Make sure that you pick up a copy of What a Mess, Blackmail, so that you can dive into all of this suspense, personal conflict, and all those unexpected twists that we've been hearing about. Wow, that'll keep you busy, wouldn't it, with 600 odd pages. So to all of our BrightWord listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if I may say, yes, go on, Mark.
You can find it on Amazon, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Now, that was what I was going to ask you. Is there anything else we haven't discussed so far that you'd like to put in before the end?
Well, the last November, the book was awarded the International Impact Book Award for LGBTQ. And because of that, I'm now up for Author of the Year, too. So,
yeah, we should have mentioned that at the top, I think. But no, that's really good. Well done. So we'll make sure that, we'll sort of, post that around. So, excellent. Oh gosh, that must have been quite something to win that.
I was shocked because, again, I wrote an erotica story that if you're going to go on a spice level of 1 to 5, it's an 11. It's like, okay, but they came back. It's they told me it was a good, thrilling novel. And it's like, score.
Yeah. So not just a whole bunch of erotica, but actually readable and a story.
Well, erotica is the story. The sex comes after the story on there. The story drives the sex. So the story drives the sex.
So there you go. Brilliant. Well, listen, guys, make sure that you buy this book. Come on, you can get it on Amazon. Make sure you look for it. And it sounds like it's a real riot. So, okay. Thanks again, listeners. Thank you to all our BrightWord listeners. Thank you for tuning in as usual. Mark, thank you. It's been great to speak to you and to meet you and hear about the book as well. And for everybody else, if you've enjoyed this episode, which, both of us hope you did, then don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And we'll be back soon with more conversations and stories to light up your reading list. So until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep shining as well. See you later. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Mark. All right. Cheers. Thank you.